Alrighty. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Talking Swish. Larry is not going to be joining us this evening because he is getting finished up with moving into his new place, so he's doing that this evening. But we're gonna move on without him here for one more week, and then next week things should probably be back to normal, I assume, and he'll be back with us on a regular basis. But as I alluded to last week we had our special guest teammate Daniel Wharton on, who got ninth place at the last NRG. And one of his losses was actually to our special guest this week, who got second place at the NRG last weekend in Modern, Will Krueger. How are you doing tonight, man? Good, dude. Good. But yeah, man, we're excited to have you on. I'm especially excited to have you on because I haven't played very much Hammer, and that's what you have been, well, what you had success with at the last event. You know how to play tons of decks. I remember one of the first really cool decks I remember seeing from you or noticing that you built was the like black splash in the Amulet Titan deck with like the Memora sides and stuff. You were like the innovator of that, weren't you? Okay. Yeah. Hmm. Yep. Yep. Sure. Yep. Yep. I remember that one too. Okay. Okay. Awesome, man. Yeah. I remember those decks. They were really sweet. Oh, hold on. You know what? All right. Can we hear him now? Can you guys talk again? It may have been.
That's
Yeah. We should be able to
just
hear
like
you now. I had my desktop audio off from when I was doing
oh,
streaming, so that was the issue. I
gotcha.
usually turn that off. My bad, guys. My bad. We've got me running things tonight, which is fairly unusual. Usually Larry runs things, so I'm still getting used to how to run the podcast properly. So sorry everybody for the nonsense there. And yes,
We're good.
Mole Money says we've got the whale on tonight, the X
Iconic.
whale. Is there any story behind the name X whale?
There is a story.
Is it a good one?
No,
Okay.
not really. I can tell it if you want.
I'm down to
Yeah,
hear
let's
it.
hear it. Yeah. So when I was like, I don't know, 13 or something, I spent a lot of Minecraft with my friends, right?
Okay.
And we all made our names the letter X followed by an animal that like sounds like our name. And so like my friend Simon was salmon, and there's like a million variations on that. And I was like 16 or 17 when I made my Moto account, and I just used the same name, and
That's cool, man.
yeah,
That's cool. That's cool. I like it.
yeah,
All right, so we'll kind of stop doing the introductory stuff and let's just kind of hop right into your the hammer list from this past weekend. So you got second place at the
yeah,
NRG with a kind of new version of Hammer in a way, with a couple new cards at least, cards
yeah.
that I haven't seen in a while, and I don't think most people had seen. And I'd imagine that some of your opponents were probably pretty surprised to see this card too, and by the time they know it's there, they just die. So,
Yeah,
why
yeah.
don't you
Most people
talk
were
to us a
reading it.
little bit about how you ended up on Core Outfitter in Hammer?
Yeah, so So that's not really like my
Okay.
innovation. I'm not a great deck builder and stuff,
Okay.
but I tried Outfitter for like very briefly, or maybe I even like didn't even play it. And I like thought about it and dismissed it just like in theory or whatever, like a few
Sure.
months ago. Uh, like just like super briefly. Like I said, I might not have even played any matches. Uh, and then Jacob Negro recently posted a list on Twitter with a Ginger Brute and 2 Outfitters.
Okay.
And I was like not super happy with where my hammer build had been. I'd been trying various builds like main deck Thoughtseize, which I didn't really like,
Okay.
Ingenious Smith, which I didn't like at all,
Okay.
Giver of Runes, didn't really like that, Dark Confidant, whatever. There's a
Okay.
million things you could do. And one of the easiest ways to lose with the hammer deck is just not drawing an equipper because you only have 8, and unlike you can't, like your saga can't search for an equipper, right? So you just
Sure.
have to naturally draw it. You don't have any control over it because you don't have cantrips or anything like that. You just have to draw one.
Yep.
You can present multiple almost every game though with Luris though, because Luris is like if they don't prismatic ending you or force negation you, then it's then you're good at presenting multiple. But getting the first one can be kind of hard.
Right.
And so I was like, all right, I'll just play the Outfitter, and they were fine. Like they weren't like insane or anything, but I did get to go turn 1 hammer, turn 2 core Outfitter curve a few times, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
And then Ginger Brute came up a couple times, and yeah, nothing crazy, but probably better than what I was doing before, and so probably sticking with those changes this weekend in Milwaukee.
Okay, cool. So you're gonna be running Hammer back again in the.
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. Why do you like Hammer in the current format?
So recently, and by recently I mean like last year, 6 months or so, my
Sure.
philosophy on like what deck I should be playing has shifted from like what I think is like some combination of fun, and I can like sort of reverse engineer why I think it's good after I think it's fun,
Sure.
instead of it's just like, okay, I'm looking at what decks have the most effect on the metagame and why do they have those effects.
Yeah.
And you can look at like all the modern decks, right? And there's so many decks that are just like anti-hammer decks. Like, yeah, I play 3 Kolagons Command, 3 Engineer Explosives. Okay, I have 4 Force Vigors in my board. The hammer still does really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And there are some decks that when they're hated out, they don't play well in the face of hate, but hammer really does. It's so resilient. It's insane because you have so many angles between like long game with Luris and Saga. You can make a ton of value, and you can also just turn 2 them. Like the hate cards are good. Like I do lose to Force of Vigor a lot of the time.
Sure.
Like, if you have it, it's going to be good. But I don't know. I just think it's really resilient, really powerful, and I do like playing it.
Okay.
I hope that I'm not biased by that.
Yeah, well, part of it is too when you're having a lot of success, it's hard to not like what you're playing,
yeah,
right?
Like I never lose. So.
Yeah, exactly. When you're doing well with a deck, it's pretty easy to love the deck. Like it,
Yeah, exactly.
you know. Yeah, for sure. There have been like I didn't particularly love the Urza Oko decks, but when I like 8-0'd Modern at the Invitational last year, I was like, well, yeah, this is fine, I guess. This is pretty fun.
This is
Gilded
right?
Goose into Oko is pretty cool, I guess. Turn 1 Emery with Mox Opal, sure, whatever, I guess. It's fine. No, yeah, I hear you, man. So what are I don't have a lot of experience with Hammer at all. We have Andrew Wolfeis on our team is a pretty big hammer guy, but I haven't talked a ton with him about the deck, and I assume you two probably have somewhat different philosophies. So, what are some of the really good matchups you think for Hammer? Do you have some really like if you sit across from this matchup, you're like, oh yeah, this is something I want to play against?
Yeah, I think like the best matchups are like that like currently exist right now are basically decks that like rely really heavily on red removal spells. Like Hammer's really, really good at fighting through red removal.
Makes sense.
Because you can either respond with Sigarda's Aid, you can build up a big turn where you have multiple hammers, you can make constructs that are bigger than the red removal or whatever.
Yeah.
So like Burn and Murktide come to mind.
Okay.
Like I think if I could play a whole tournament against Burn and Murktide and lose every die roll, I would snap it off. Like I would be totally fine with that.
Sweet, man. Very cool. Okay. What are some matchups that when you sit down across from, you're like, oh no? And I think I know what one of them is going to be because I'm pretty sure you tweeted on Twitter before your finals match, you were like, oh God, here we go. Yeah. So what are some matchups you really don't want to play against with
Elementals
Hammer?
Is tough, man.
Elementals
is tough. That was a tough finals opponent. I was watching the other semifinals, and I like the Rhinos guy was winning, and the Elementals guy drew Omnath, and I'm like, no. Because like Rhinos is like close, Elementals is so good. I was like, oh no. So they have Force Solitude, which is one of the hardest cards to beat. I mean, it's not like that hard to beat, but it's one of the best cards you can have in your main deck.
Yep.
And they also play Ephemerate. So like Solitude
Exactly. Yeah, I was
Ephemerate,
about
like
to
if that
say it's
ever
a
happened,
lot harder to beat when they do it and then do it again, and then it stays in play as a lifelinker, and then randomly can be
yep.
a vigilant creature later as well with the
Yep, and they have
Kahira.
Fury too. And that
Yep.
guy boarded into Force of Vigor. He had 2 bolts main deck. He drew them both game 1, and then he had like
Ugh.
Helixes in his board too. I think he had some number of EEs too. I mean, he was ready. He was telling
Yeah,
me
and he
that
had a dress down. He had a dress down for your
yeah,
constructs if that came up too.
yeah, he had so much, and he was telling me he went to the Hunter Burton in Dallas, and he said he lost a hammer a few times there, and he's lost a hammer a couple times, and he's just like, I'm just gonna play a ton of hate because
Sure.
if I don't, like, and I think that's totally reasonable because hammer is really messed up, and so
Yeah.
like even packing hate if it's already like kind of close, totally reasonable, and he got me. I mean, he was very prepared for hammer, and it paid off for him. So
Yeah, clearly. I don't think he
like
dropped a
that.
match the whole day. I don't think he
No,
lost
we
in
ID'd it
Swiss, and then he obviously won the whole tournament, and then he won the last NRG too. So he's making me look kind of silly for putting elementals down, because I put elementals down after the invitational, and
I saw you playing it there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard a few of your matches.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, funny enough, actually, I lost a hammer at the invitational. I was pretty bummed when I lost to hammer because I went 4-0 in standard, I think, or 3-1. I can't remember. I went 4-0 in standard, and then I started 0-2 in modern, and my second loss was to hammer, and I was like, oh god, like that's rough. Like losing a
yeah. It is a good matchup.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of my better matchups, and it was
beat anybody.
exactly it can like. He drew pretty well in games. I think it was 2 and 3. I can't. He might have got me game 1 though. But I didn't. There was like one mistake I made in one of the games. I can't quite remember. I think I was a little early on my Solitude and could have been more patient and should have been more patient. But either way, yeah, Hammer's a sick deck for sure. And like you said, it can kind of just beat anything and can kind of play through the hate. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, that's awesome, man. So. You said you're going to keep playing it in the future. Are there any like adjustments or anything? Were there any cards that you didn't like? Are there any things you maybe want to change about your sideboard? Obviously, you don't have to share all your tech or whatever here.
I'm an open book.
Okay,
man.
fair enough.
I got nothing to hide.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't thought too hard about it. Honestly, I'm probably gonna run back my same 75 I played 2 weekends ago. I mean, nothing has changed drastically. No breakout decks or anything. Maybe I'll play some more Sanctifiers. I might just play no Hushbringers and just lose to the Elementals deck and the Blink decks.
Sure.
Those didn't seem super popular, and there were a lot of Blood Crypt gamers.
Yeah.
Like, so many.
Yep.
I did EXO Blood Crypt the whole weekend.
Nice.
But my opponents...
That's fair. I was about... Yeah, because So, I guess I've... At this point, I've been playing Shadow the last few weeks. What do you think of the Shadow matchup from your seat so far, from the Hammer seat? Do you have a ton of experience in that matchup? What have you kind of thought of that matchup?
I think Shadow's pretty far ahead, especially if you're main decking Dress Down.
Yep.
Because game 1, the way that I would beat the old Grixis decks before they would play Shadow, not old, but like, a few months older.
Yeah.
Is like they were sort of cold to Saga. I don't want to say cold to Saga, but like, I mean, that much value for one card against a deck like that is always going to be pretty reasonable.
Because all they want to do is 1-for-1 you into the ground. Yeah. That was kind of the point of the black-red deck. And so Saga is inherently like a 3-for-1 if you're able to get both constructs and the one mana artifact. Exactly. So that makes sense.
Shadow Spear is always worth a card.
Yep.
Not always, but it's usually worth a card.
Absolutely.
Or like I can get a hammer, target my Mem Knight with an 8 or something like that, and then it's worth a ton of value there. But Dress Down, I mean, not only does it answer the Saga almost entirely, you get the 1-mana artifact still and draw a card, but it's also a huge tempo swing for you because I have to invest 2 full turns with it and I lose my land. So like I'm going to have less mana on future turns, and like Dress Down lines up so well because I mean, obviously, like
yeah. Funny enough,
I made that Dress Down. It's tough.
It is. Funny enough, as you're bringing this up, I think my round 3 or 4 opponent at the NRG this past week, or I guess last weekend, he was on Hammer, and I set up the like Luris Dress Down stuff, and he had a Pure Steel that just did nothing the entire game because it could, and he had a Hammer, but he could just never move it because I kept giving the Pure Steel no text and just put him in the lock.
That lock is pretty brutal.
It is, yeah. That's why, like, Shadow is why I moved off Elementals, man, because that that was another, just like if they get that Luris lock on you, like you're just like so screwed. Like unless you can somehow get 3 mana Teferi in play, which you usually have to top deck it because they're gonna rip it out of your hand with the Thoughtseize of the
Right.
Inquisition. If you don't top deck it, man, I mean they assemble that combination, the dress down and the Luris, and obviously they have tons of other ways they can beat you too. But like if they just get that going, your deck just doesn't do anything. It's just completely nothing because almost
Yeah.
all of your elementals are sorcery speed. Risen Reef becomes a joke.
Yeah.
Muldrifter
And
becomes a joke. It's all just a disaster. So
I experienced
yeah,
that too.
Shadow is why I moved off elementals, and I'm still very worried. Like I like elementals. I think it's a really good deck, but I'm just very concerned that Shadow just seems to be getting more and more traction. It feels like almost every week. It seems to just continually be doing really well right now, and so I'm very scared to pick up elementals again because I do not
It's
want to
totally
play against a
reasonable.
bunch of, especially if they're good pilots too.
Yeah.
That really scares me because I've been losing to like I was losing to just random guys at FNM on Shadow, which
Yeah.
is really concerning. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, so um, yeah, I don't know. Dewey, do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
Yeah, I mean, so with people have talked about Hammer for a while. Like some of the nuances of it are known, but like, what are the different interactions you've seen that come up that players might not be aware of or might be aware of that they should keep an eye out for? Or what about new Hammer players if they're learning about it and picking it up? Is what's going on with them?
So the first thing that you like basically have to do is if you're playing Hammer is you have to be pretty familiar with all the interaction that like every stock deck can have
Yeah.
for basically a giant guy. So like if you have assembled a giant guy, if you put a hammer on something, what can they do?
Yeah.
And then you also want to know like what the other interaction that can prevent you from getting the giant guy. So like against Blue Red Murktide, an example is they usually play between 6 and 8 lightning bolt effects with Unholy Heat, and they play like one main deck EE and like one or two charms usually. And so like the EEs and the charms are the things that can prevent you from having your big guy. And so it's like ideal to put the hammer on the Stoneforge Mystic generally instead of your Memnite, although intuitively you want to put it on your worst possible creature. That's like the easy shortcut. But you want to put it on Stoneforge Mystic usually or Pure Steel if you have a window,
Hmm.
because then it's a 2 mana guy, they can't steal it. And if they steal it and you don't have a Pure Steel, it's like pretty bad for you because like they have a 12/12 and you don't.
You're right.
It's like that's just like one example, and so you should be really familiar with everything. And I see it pretty crazy because like I see like a lot of people play Pure Steel, then they play Hammer like into open mana. Don't do
Yeah.
that. Uh, don't do that because then they'll kill your Pure Steel, and then you're gonna be really sad. But if you do it the other way, then you put it on something else, and they have to kill that, and they have to kill your Pure Steel. And
Okay.
also you got to do that even if they're playing Solitude, you have to do it that way, which is super lame because like I mean sometimes you have to peel a Shadow Spear or whatever, so you just kind of have to clinch.
Hmm.
But like yeah,
Okay.
you can force them to have two removal spells that way, and those are like fairly basic things. I guess there's also like Sigarda's Aid versus Prismatic Ending decks. Like I sandbag my Sigarda's Aid. Like if my opponent reveals Kahira and I'm not bottlenecked too hard on mana, I just chill on it
That's
unless I
really
have like
smart.
another one or another Pure Steel or something.
That's
Because like, if my whole
really
draw
smart.
gets blown up by an ending, then you just can't play it out. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yep.
it's just too bad for you.
That makes a lot of sense. That's very smart. Because a lot of players will just run it out there on turn one, I assume, all the time, and
Yeah.
then get punished if your opponent has the prismatic ending. Do you you said you do it against Kahira if they reveal Yorion? Do you do that too?
Yeah, usually, and
Okay.
it's like it's all dependent on your hand because
Yeah.
if you like mulligan maybe and your choke point is mana, sometimes you can't respect it.
Sure.
But
Sometimes you
it
just have
like
to hope they don't have it. The classic
yeah,
pretend it doesn't exist type of thing, and just
yeah,
kind of
you
hope.
definitely get into those spots. But like
Sure.
it's good to be aware of like you don't necessarily have to play your aid at the first opportunity because if you can leave an aid in play or whatever, that's usually better for you than if they have to hit the hammer because you have way more access to way more hammers.
Sure.
But like, if you also have another aid, then it's like, oh, just obviously play the first one. You know what I
That
mean?
makes
Because like
sense.
you're
Yeah.
ending
Yeah.
it, then you have two. Oh, and then if you have two aids against a red deck, you can target two guys, and then they bolt one, and or you just leave it there. You know what I mean? Like, so like two aids beats a removal spell
Okay.
against red decks, beats red removal spells. Not fatal push because you have to choose, and then they just wait for the trigger to resolve, and then like terminate or fatal push or whatever beats you.
Yeah. Like
But like bolt and heat don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like those
Okay.
are just like some off the top of my head like things to be aware of, I guess, if that's
Yeah.
useful.
No, I mean it's useful because like I think a lot of people go into the matchup either they're against it or they're the one playing it, and if it's the earlier times picking up, they go, "This is a combo deck," and it is a combo deck,
Yeah,
and
kind of.
but
Yeah.
it has like lots of value there. It
Mhm.
can play the controller game. It can take the long route. The mirror matches are insane.
The mirror matches are. Yeah, the mirror matches. Yeah, like cause sometimes you just get run over. Like sometimes
Right.
you just die on turn 3, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
beats. But like after board, like when people have path and ending and seal and like seal Luris is like kind of the ideal game state that you're playing towards because it's like
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
not really beatable because it's like, well, I have a disenchant every turn,
Yep.
and you can like kind of beat that if you have. It's like if I have Luris and Pure Seal and Hammer, then I am beating your Luris Seal because I'm drawing a card every cycle, I
Yep.
guess, and it's like that's
Yeah.
kind of how you can get out of that. But like if you can manage their Luris and keep your Luris in play with a seal, then it's too much almost always.
Yep, that's why I've played Hammer a few weeks ago at F&M, and I had that come up. I played against a buddy of ours, Zach, who may even be listening to this right now, so he remembers it well probably. But yeah, he was doing the non-Luris build because he was just trying it out type of thing, like his first week even playing the deck. And I mulled to 5 in game 2, but established the Luris seal thing, and he just kind of couldn't really do anything. So that that does make a lot of sense. Um, one question I wanted to ask. You mentioned testing a little bit of the Dark Confidant. Was the Dark Confidant build no good? Because that's the build I've seen and been really tempted to try. Because I love some Dark Confidant. I'm a big Dark Confidant guy.
Yeah, I definitely respect liking Dark Confidant. I also like Dark Confidant. I am a Dark Confidant enjoyer.
Yeah.
If I'm trying to win a tournament, I like there's a few problems with Dark Confidant.
Sure.
And there are like some strengths and weaknesses for all of the cards that you can play like in your flex spot. I'm sure you've seen all the lists with like whatever. And Dark Confidant is like sort of an individual card that like if it is unanswered, it will take over the game
Right.
most of the time. Like if your light total is under a ton of pressure and they don't have an answer, then it will actually help you set up. Unlike Core Outfitter, which on its own is nothing. Giver of Runes on its own isn't super helpful. Ingenious Smith is sort of like Dark Confidant, but like is also better at like attacking and blocking and stuff like that. And it's also better against removal spells. Ton of pros and cons. But I think overall, trading down on mana with this deck is like really bad. Like it's really bad to take your turn 2 off and let them like if you're on the play, you do turn 2, trade my turn 2 for your turn 1, and then you untap and hold up counterspell. That's really bad.
Sure.
And there's also the disaster scenario of Ren and 6. Like Ren and 6 is like nightmarish.
That
Dark
makes
Confidant
a lot of
is
sense.
really good. Dark Confidant is really good against blue white, and I started boarding them for a little while for like basically like a dedicated blue white card.
Sure.
But then I just swapped them to Knight of Malice because I thought Knight of Malice. Well, actually, I swapped them for Knight of Infamy, and then I learned that you can't target Knight of Infamy.
Right. Yeah. When I played the deck at F&M, I was literally asking somebody. I was like, "Why in the heck do they know that Knight of Infamy exists? Like, what is this?" And then after the tournament, I was thinking about it more, and I was like, "Oh, you can't throw a hammer on the other one because it has protection from." Okay, I get it now. Type of deal.
I played that one in a Magic Online PTQ, made top 8, and then afterwards was informed, like, have you considered this card that actually works with the cards in your deck? I was like,
oh, that's so funny, man. That's great, dude. Who cares though? The card. I mean, honestly, they're both like so good in the matchup, so they're good that you don't even necessarily have to hammer it up, right? You just like pound them over and over because the other one had Exalted too, right? So it's always pounding in for 3, even with no hammer, and you can throw like a Shadow Spear on it too, and I'd imagine a Shadow Spear on a pro, just completely pro your opponent's color on a 4-power creature. I mean, that's a 5-turn clock all by itself, and you're gaining a bunch of life. So I'd imagine that's really hard to raise.
On it still, but
it's
definitely better to just play Malice, just because like I mean it's almost the same, and then like if you have aid, that's just a huge interaction. So.
Sure, yeah, makes sense.
If you want that effect at all, like I right now I don't have any of that in my 75 because blue white's kind of trending downwards, I guess, towards like the 4-color decks, and it's a lot less potent against the 4-color decks because they have Bolt and Fury. Excuse me, sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, the Ren and 6 scenario for Dark Confidant seems.
It's a tough. It's a tough
Yeah,
sell,
that's
man.
a
Like,
big yikes. It's a
I'm already upset getting my Mem Knights Ren minus, and I
Yeah.
put 0 mana into them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, dude. That's a really,
Nightmare
really
stuff, man.
horrible exchange for sure. In a lot of the lists that have been main decking Dark Confidant, I've also been seeing like main deck Thought Seizes. There was even one list
Yeah.
that played Duresses and Thought Seizes. What do you think of those cards in the main deck?
So basically, the way I view this deck is like I view the way that you want to beat interaction is you want to overload their mana.
Sure.
And Thoughtseize is sort of doesn't help you overload their mana because it sort of helps you like if you can use Thoughtseize in a few ways where you're either like trading resources and trying to get both players down to 0, or you can try to like poke a hole. Usually poking a hole against like the current decks like Murktide and Jund is not feasible because they just have so much removal. And so you need to be able to poke a hole. You need to fight over their mana, basically. And so, like, game 1, I don't really like it. But the format has adapted so much to Hammer that, like, Solitude, that you're going to play against multiple 4X main deck Solitude decks in the tournament. You're going to play against multiple Force of Vigor decks in most tournaments. And, like, at a certain point, those cards, you have to have a countermeasure to those cards in some capacity.
Yeah.
And I think that the best anti-Force of Vigor card is Thoughtseize, basically. I mean, there's like, there's other stuff, like there's Voidmere and stuff, but like they can still cast it for 4, and like, Thoughtseize isn't perfect by any means, but I sort of view it as a reaction to the hate cards and the free cards like Solitude that you can't really fight over in the normal way.
That makes sense. Dewey, do you have any more questions to throw at him here?
The Ginger Brew. Did you liked it? You didn't like it?
Good question.
Where are we at?
I thought that, like, I don't know. I don't even count how many total matches. I guess it would be played 9 rounds on Sunday, and I played like I think 8 or 9 or something. So it's like 17 or 18 total matches at the Energy, and I got the Ginger Brute like once or twice off Saga, and I was never happy to draw it. Like I don't think a single time.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah. It's like only okay. Like it's cool to have unblockable. I think I might be being like too results oriented though, with like not liking it. Like because it makes sense like in theory, because like it's I think it's good in the mirror because everything gets jumped in the hammer mirror.
Yep.
Except Gingerbread. Gingerbread does not get jumped, which is like super key because you can unblockable it. Not unblockable. I was actually watching a friend play a league today, and we couldn't unblockable our Gingerbread because our opponent had a Cauldra, and the token has haste.
Oh,
like,
man!
My God, we can't. And then we just had like this weird board stall for like 10 turns, and it was like.
It's pretty crazy, man. That's pretty crazy.
I think I'm just gonna keep playing the Gingerbread. It also gives you like it helps you fix like the problem of like if you have Saga trigger resolving, and you have an equipper and you have a hammer, then you can get a creature to kill them that turn.
Okay.
And it's like that's like sort of helpful. It's like a sort of a new axis to the deck, I guess, where you are like 100% safe if you kill all my guys, right? If I don't have Gingerbread in my deck, because you are guaranteed to get your next turn. You're guaranteed to get to use your mana again. But that's like not necessarily the truth if I have a Gingerbread in my deck to either search for a Saga or just randomly play for my hand and kill you all in one go. So I think the Gingerbread is probably good. I'm gonna keep playing it for a little while, but I'm not like 100% locked on it or anything.
Okay.
Yeah, it makes sense to have at least a one of in the deck.
Yeah.
Being able to patch it up, and like we were talking about earlier, where people always kind of have to just respect what you have. They can't just let down the shield, otherwise they can just die. The Gingerbread just helps reinforce that even further.
Yeah, it's like you could just die even if I have no mana on your end step and I have no creatures in play. You might just die out of nowhere, because I have this unblockable haste guy. So it does make sense. I think I was just like, I don't know, maybe it's like variance or whatever you want to call it, where it's like the Gingerbread wasn't good for me over. It's only 20 not even 20 matches, so like I'm just gonna keep playing it because the reasons make sense still, even though it wasn't particularly good for me over that weekend.
Okay. Actually, I came up with another question I wanted to ask. So last week we were talking with Dan and we were reviewing your guys' match, and he was talking about how I think in game 3 he got you down to exactly 0 cards.
Yes, sir.
Exactly 0. And you had boarded up to, do you remember how many you boarded up to?
62.
62.
Very scientific number. I ran the numbers. It was the perfect number. I have no idea.
Oh, okay. I was about to ask. 62. What's the What's the
So-
reason for 62 instead of 64? Or all sometimes you'll run into someone on Moto who just brings in their whole sideboard. Obviously, that's not correct. It's just way too much percentage. You're hurting your deck. But what was the thought process behind 62?
Yeah, so basically the reason I went with 62 was I forget exactly what I was doing. I had like cut all my Mem Knights, and I was like deciding between like Core Outfitter and like something else, or like a Mem Knight or whatever, or like 2 Core Outfitters or something like that. And I was like, well, do I think I'm gonna win more with Core Outfitter, with like an extra Core Outfitter or 2 in my deck, or not? I forget what the last 2 cards that I was thinking about were.
Sure.
I was like, am I to win more with these in my deck or in my sideboard? And I was like, well, they add extra. They're 2 drops, so they add extra converted mana cost for Tasha's. Oh, Sanctifier on deck was the other kind of marginal card.
Sure.
Like they have black removal spells, but like the game's kind of quick. You kind of got a Goldfish, but you kind of can't Goldfish because they have all the removal spells. Anyway, I was like, am I going to win more with these in my deck or like in my sideboard? It's like, well, I get to add some converted mana cost, and like it's not like it doesn't mess up. You're not like way more likely to get mana screwed if you have 62 cards or 61 cards. It's like,
right.
Come on, that's not.
It's pretty marginal. Pretty marginal.
Yeah, it's super marginal. And like the things come up with Tasha's and stuff. That did end up coming up, and I felt like a genius.
Yeah.
It might have been bad. I'm not like confident. It was like, yes, it was definitely right. I ran like I have this great logic because it was just kind of an on the fly thing. You can ask him. I boarded into 60 in game 2 and changed my mind for game 3. Like he asked me the same question. How many cards did you board to? And I guess he probably had that happen before because he asked me in like the opening turns of game 2, like, how many cards did you board into? And I was like, well, and then kind of got me thinking for game 3. And I was like,
oh man, Dan shouldn't have asked. He should have kept his mouth shut. You might not.
Maybe I don't. But it ended up, just a very, very bizarre. And I obviously got super lucky that it. I mean, it was being on camera too was so sick. It was like, here's me boarding up to 62, winning with no cards in my deck against Mill.
So sweet, man.
It was pretty funny, yeah.
Yeah, no, Dan last week was really game 3 he clearly had thought about a lot after the match because he's a thinker, man. He loves thinking about Magic, and
he's like a smart guy.
We recently added him to the team, and he's a great asset to the team for sure. He's a
crusher, man.
Yeah, man. He's a really strong player, and he's a really deep thinker, and sure. I really enjoy watching him play and talking with him about the game, and he's always striving to get better, and he's a really cool guy for sure. But yeah, so I guess I'm out of questions on the modern portion of things. Do you have any more questions to do with Hammer, Dewey?
No, I think that's good. Let's move on to Legacy.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Legacy. So this weekend we also have a Legacy NRG coming up, and you and I were discussing our deck choice before the podcast a little bit. So why don't you talk about what you're going to play?
I'm just going to play Super Stock Delver. Just like you could literally look at probably the first list on Goldfish will probably be 3 or 4 cards off of whatever I play, right? I'm going to have just like 18 lands I'm going to play the Steam Lands configuration. I'm probably going to play all 16 threats. I think all 16 threats make sense against like lands and death and taxes.
Yeah.
Just maxing out on Delver, DRC, Ragavan, and Murktide because I think Delver's actually pretty good in the death and taxes and lands matchups.
Yep.
And so just play all 16 threats, no baubles or anything. I think I'm going to play Dead Gone in like the flex removal spot. That could be like Gut Shot or whatever other burn spell you want.
Big fan of Dead Gone right now.
Yep, that's the conclusion we came to as well, is that we should probably be playing Dead Gone for the Murktide specifically.
Yeah, Murktide and Merit Liege.
Merit Liege. We haven't had that one come up yet, but that one makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, we had I had seen it down at the Buffalo Chicken Dip tournament where it very much that they went Merit Liege and he would bounce it to your hand and well, I lose.
It's kind of nice to have your Mother of Runes, Stoneforge Mystic, Ragavan answer also pick off the 2020. Like it kind of works out pretty well, even if it's a little inefficient and sometimes it doesn't line up well against Dragon Race Channeler as opposed to like a Chain Lightning or whatever else you would want to play. But yeah, I think that just Super Stock Delver, it just wins every tournament. It does well on everything. It's the best deck, and I mean, I don't know. There's plenty of decks that could win the tournament. Like if you told me Death and Taxes wins the tournament, or Green White Depths wins the tournament, or remember I played against Alan's team in the team event, and he had like a Jeskai control deck.
Yep.
If you told me a deck like that wins the tournament, I'm not gonna be shocked. But I think the deck that is most likely to win the tournament is probably just Blue Red Delver. And play the deck it's most likely.
Yeah, especially when you consider how many people are playing the deck too. It's by far. I mean, the numbers. Isn't it like it's probably around 20-25% of the metagame right? I would
I have
assume.
no idea. I don't look at the data.
That's
or
fair.
anything.
Dewey, do you have any idea? We could probably pull it up right now on Goldfish
Yeah.
and see what the
there should be
percentage
some
is.
guys
I'm
who
gonna
do
guess it's at
track
least
it.
20%. That's my guess. I
That-
could be
that
off.
Seems accurate. I mean, it's so popular.
Let's
Doing a 7-day average, Is It Delver is at 23.4%.
Yep. I mean, I'm not surprised by that at all. So if we assume that's going to be 25% of the room, then yeah, you could also assume that's going to put at least 2 copies probably into top 8 just from the numbers alone. But then
Yeah,
when you
from the
consider
rate.
how good the deck is, and also that most legacy players, good legacy players, are probably going to gravitate usually towards Delver too, because they know it's like the best thing. But yeah, Will, I was saying last week on the podcast to Dan that I also was planning on playing Delver, and I'm still planning on playing Delver just because I totally agree with that take, man. I mean, it's such a good deck. It's
So good.
very
It's so
obviously
good.
it's very obviously the best deck. It isn't
Yep.
even if you argue that it's the best deck, I think you're kind of nuts or you're in denial. I mean, but the deck just like, it's just insane. Like it seems to put like 3 to 4 copies in every top 8. It seems to put like 9 to 10 copies in every top 16. It's just such a good deck. It's able to Ragavan in Days is just so broken, man. I mean, like on the play especially.
Ragavan Days on the play is like
Just
it's
like-
you got a Caracas?
Yeah,
If
like
not, we are done.
Yeah, it's
Like,
just so stupid,
yeah,
dude.
like-
It's so crazy
Yeah,
good.
sometimes like, oh, cool, you have a Caracas. I'll take care of that. I'm gonna go back to my original game.
Yeah, it's like all right.
Yeah,
it's
oh,
always
okay.
gonna
You
be
had the
and then back.
Caracas. Shucks,
like-
wastelanded.
yeah.
Play
You're
my.
gonna have removal for your 1-drop, and you gotta have backup for it a lot of the time. And like Ragavan and Days, they're both great on their own. Like
Yeah.
Ragavan is really strong threat.
Oh yeah.
And Days is obviously it's Days. It's been legacy staple for 20 years or whatever. And like it's like, and if you draw them together on turn 1 with a volcanic island or a steam vents or a fetch land or whatever, it's over.
Yeah.
Like you almost can't lose. I know over is a little bit of an exaggeration.
Yeah,
Obviously,
but it's insane how good it is. Like
yeah.
I remember we ran some leagues or whatever, and Larry and I played one with Burn, which is like traditionally supposed to be awesome against Delver. Like it's supposed to be your one
Yep.
like pretty good matchup. It's like your only good matchup because Burn is
Yep.
pretty bad.
Yeah.
And
Really
it just is. I mean, but it's pretty good against Delver. That's always been like okay, well, if Delver is crazy popular, I can just play Burn and I might be able to spike a tournament because I can just beat all the Delver players. Well, there are 2 problems that exist now. One is the whole monkey daze situation, which we ran into. We lost a die roll and tried to bolt a monkey, and it got dazed, and then we got hit, and then they had 1,000,000 mana, and things just kind of fell apart from there. But the other problem is they also just have a 2-mana 8/8 flyer now, which you can't really deal with burn spells very well, it turns out. So things have gone from bad to worse for Burn, in my opinion. It's hard to even
Burn is
remotely.
not a serious competitor in like. If that's a deck that if you told me that won the energy, I would be shocked.
Yeah.
I mean, now I'm looking forward to revisiting this in like 6 days or whatever. And
When Burn has won the NRG with like
With
four
the
with like 4 main deck red elemental blasts or
Sure.
just something completely ridiculous, something
Yeah,
that
yeah.
just really speaks to where we are in the metagame. What was that, Dewey?
Yeah.
I think if you're gonna play Burn, that's honestly the only way to go right
Oh,
now.
it probably is because you can't beat a Murktide, man. Like, it's just a joke, and it would also randomly give you more of a chance against these combo decks. So who knows? Maybe it actually
Sure.
would be a good plan in Burn. I don't know, but
Kinda
yeah, it's
early,
probably
dude.
just
I mean,
not
that-
the deck to play. If we're being honest with ourselves, who knows? Maybe you
No,
could like
no, I mean,
splash
don't-
blue for iteration or something. But at that point, why aren't we just playing Delver?
Let's just start with Delver.
Let's just-
play the good
yeah.
deck, just keep it simple.
Full circle. I'm gonna splash iteration. Well, then I should be playing some bulk. Well, I guess I should be playing Ragavan at that point.
Yeah.
that would-
Oh, I guess Darcy might be pretty good in this deck.
Darcy's
Okay.
good. Darcy's good.
This card's pretty good. Murktide pays off all these burn spells I'm playing.
I guess I should try to make those more reliable.
This brainstorm card's pretty good.
Yeah, Brainstorm, Ponder, those
Powerful.
might go pretty well in my deck. Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
honestly, the
yeah.
legacy metagame right now is obviously, you have Is It Delver as the #1 deck, and then it's every other deck seems to be let's see if we can tackle
Yeah.
against it in our own way. And then after that, you have what? Doomsday, I think, is considered like the best combo deck against
Yeah.
all the fair decks, but then it just dies to your is it Delver, so it's like
Exactly. Yeah.
it's a weird spot to be in right now.
Yeah. Doomsday is like, well, as long as I dodge Delver, I'll probably beat everyone.
Yep.
And like that is mostly true. Like that deck's probably good against like all the creature decks,
Mhm.
and it's obviously it's gonna dunk on lands and like green white depths and all like the Merit Lage stuff.
Yeah.
And then you can hang with control, but your Doomsday matchup is bad, or your Delver matchup is bad with Doomsday rather. Sorry, I misspoke.
How's the DNT matchup with Doomsday? I can't imagine they're super good against like Thalia and the Prelate or something if they had that draw, or am I wrong?
I am not a Doomsday player,
Okay.
but my understanding is that DNT is a buy.
Okay, they think it's that good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like I said, I don't play Doomsday, but
Sure.
that's my perception.
Okay.
From the outside. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're trying to get things set up and going, and you're just like, well, I know you can't really go interact with me. I'm just gonna go off. I don't
Sure.
have to do any setup. I can usually just have one protection spell, and then I'm good.
Or even zero. Like, I mean, all you have to do is like beat like game one. You just have to beat like Athalia, and they'll play Dorian, so it's like you have to beat. I mean, beating Athalia isn't even that hard. Like, if you just have a little bit of time, and they have no clock, and like all their cards that mess with creatures don't do anything.
Okay.
You are like kind of vulnerable to Wasteland because like you like it's so funny because like you're literally like a mono blue deck that just splashes Dark Ritual and Doomsday.
Yeah.
And like like some Thoughtseize or whatever. But like you cast Doomsday, you have like a pile of Underground Seas, and people even play Watery Grave. Like DNT, maybe the buy is strong, but like
I was gonna say, I think Larry and I played against it once in a league and we beat it, which is why I was asking. Sure. I'm just curious, but who knows how good that player was?
Yeah,
that's the thing. The pilot ability is huge especially with combo decks. Because with a combo deck like that, it is all about being a really skilled pilot. And I know earlier we had Connor Mullally in here in chat. I'm not sure if he's still here, but he is a really good example of just he's a good Magic player in general, but he has a real skill for playing combo decks. And he's had a lot of success, especially like in Pioneer with that Lotus Field deck. And he just like keeps finding ways to make that deck good again, even when it's supposed to suck. So, being a really good pilot with those combo decks is a massive deal. So I have no idea how good our opponent was. And all that.
At the end of the day, it's just one match.
And it's one match,
so the best Doomsday player in the world, like,
right?
Can you really draw like some great?
No, you can't for sure. Yeah. But I was just curious. All right, Dewey, do you have any more questions relating to Legacy?
If I was going, I guess I would be playing some pile that takes on the deck. But I know if
Are you not going?
I'm not going this week. It's a long. I moved to the east side of Michigan, so it's.
That's like a long haul.
It's a long haul for sure.
Yeah, if it was still in Grand Rapids, I probably would have gone because I had planned on going.
Yeah.
But I was like, I got to take like a half day or a full day off from Friday and Monday to make it worthwhile on the travel. So I was like, I'm just gonna pass on this one.
Seems totally reasonable. And December travel too, so you're gonna travel through.
Like, we're gonna be going through some snow for sure.
Yeah.
We've been getting quite a bit up here actually, more than usual for this time of year.
Wow, I haven't gotten any snow here in Central Illinois.
Yeah, we've been getting a pretty good amount. I know northern Michigan's getting like hammered. They've had like multiple snow days already, and pretty crazy. But yeah, I'm just happy that I was able to. My little pep talk to Dan last week has clearly paid off because he's going this weekend with us. He's not skipping this event when there's a spot for the championship on the line. I told him I would be sick if he was on our team and then chose to just not go and do an event and then miss by like a point or something.
There's like no way he misses.
I know. But it's mathematically possible, so just go to the event, dude. That's what I told him. It's very obviously he's probably locked anyway, and that's what he was saying. Yeah. But just come get your points, man. They're free. All you got to do is show up for at least a couple. Like you could have horrible days, and you're still getting a couple points. So whatever, just come and take them.
You're doing so well in them anyway. It's like I miss it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He is the only one who can pass me for Player of the Year, so I'm excited to see if he can pull off the old dub. And I just die horribly in both events.
Sure.
Not super likely, but if he's there, at least I got a sweat, right? I mean,
Yeah, exactly. It'll be interesting, and
yeah.
yeah, that'll be fun for sure. I'm excited to come play some more. NRG, we were talking before this. NRG's been doing an awesome job.
Yeah.
It's a really Max is awesome. Just
Yep,
they do a great job, and it's really we were talking about how we really liked the structure of their last team event. I hope they continue to do stuff like that in the future to play around with limited, because SCG doesn't usually do limited stuff, so it's nice to have a competitive scene for some limited events. I mean, we really need more of that, I think, other than obviously you can do it on arena here or there too, but it's not, it's different. But yeah, so it's going to be really fun to come out and play again. I had to miss that first weekend because of the whole COVID situation, but happy to be back at it and going again. But thanks a ton for joining us this week, Will.
Thanks
it was
for
a lot
having
of
me.
fun having you, man.
Yeah,
We've hit the
blast.
45-minute mark here, so we'll kind of wrap it up. But thanks a lot, dude. You really gave us tons of good information on both formats and decks.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
Oh, wait. Is this Will's first time on the cast?
Oh, you're right. We have to do that. We have to do the whole. Yeah. So if you were to have a Mount Rushmore for Magic, what 4 cards would you put on your Mount Rushmore? And they really, they can be for whatever reason you want. Power, you like the card, most iconic, whatever you want.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
To you. We'd like to hear those 4 cards and the reason.
Okay. One of the first that comes to mind is Ad Nauseam. I was an Ad Nauseam gamer for a little while.
Okay.
I got into Magic on, so like I definitely I need a lot of games to be like good. Like I don't just have it naturally like some people do. It's just not me. And so Magic Online has obviously been a huge boon for me. And I got into MTGO not right before, but like a year or so before like rental services took off, and I was 17 or whatever, and I didn't have like $500 to just drop on one deck and then swap it around. And so Ad Nauseam was super cheap, and it was like a pauper deck, and then I won a bunch with the pauper deck, and then I got Ad Nauseam, so it was even less than that. And then I go in this, like, my first 2 tournaments, I like 10-0 a Modern Challenge, and then I get like 9th in a PTQ, and I'm like, Ad Nauseam's great. And then I just had like a bankroll to keep playing Moto, and Ad Nauseam was not actually great. It was mediocre, as it has always been, but I got very lucky, and things lined up well, and it's like Ad Nauseam's on there for sure. Probably Field of the Dead. I like the green-white Reclaimer deck, both the one that I won the energy with before COVID, and then later in the year with Eldritch Reclaimer and Flagstones of Trocare. Like that deck was also really cool, and like Field of the Dead and Perennial Titan are kind of the overlap there, so I guess I'd pick Field. And I gotta say Saga, even though it's so new. I mean, Saga is just awesome. Like like the Hammer deck, and like Saga's just like so insane. So that's 3.
Yep.
Gotta pick a 4th one, huh? All right. Give me a second here. I don't know. Maybe I honestly can't even think of one. I'm totally drawing a blank here. I'm sorry, guys.
Oh, you're good, man.
Probably Lingering Souls. Okay, here's a good one. So when I was like, also once again, I was literally like brand new. I started playing Magic like that year. It was like 2015, or I started playing Magic the year before or whatever. I'm 15, 16 years old. I'm at SCG used to do 5Ks for their classics. They did the same structure, but the classics used to have like 5K in cash or whatever.
Yeah.
And there was a standard open in Milwaukee that year. I didn't play standard. My friends didn't play standard, but we all played modern because that was like what FNM was at our shop and stuff. And I would play like black white tokens because I was just like, I don't know, that's what I had, and then I randomly start 6-0 in this classic, and I'm like, this is sick. Like, and double draw in the top 8, and then I punt against Bill Silverman in the quarterfinals.
Okay.
We'll never forget that punt. It was really bad. It was like I just played heinously because I was new and I was a kid, and I just sucked. But like that like kind of hooked me on competitive Magic as a whole. So I guess so. There's like that one ad nauseum on actually trying to get good instead of just showing up to tournaments and hoping the cards fall your way. I mean, I still do kind of do that, but I also try to put effort in the actual skill part.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so I guess those 4.
Okay,
Awesome.
sweet. It was an awesome Mount Rushmore. I can't say I'm surprised to hear that there were 2 lands on there from the man who's played so many sick lands decks.
Yeah.
But that's awesome, dude. Very, very cool. Well, thanks a ton for coming on again. It was really cool having you. And good luck this weekend. We'll see you this weekend.
Sounds good, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Sounds good, man.
All right. Have a good night, guys.
You too, dude. Alrighty. Well, that was Will Krueger. That was awesome talking to him about Hammer. Obviously, I get to hear a few things from Andrew from time to time about Hammer, but I don't usually, question him about the deck as much as we were doing there with Will. And it's just really good to pick his brain. And that was very, very insightful. And I think if anybody is aspiring to pick up Hammer or to become a better Hammer pilot, you definitely want to take Will's words to heart, because Will's a great player, man. He has been completely dominant and not only the NRG series, but he's also just been really, really good on Moto for the past, it feels like 3, maybe 4 years. But he's a really, really strong player and really, really knows what's up. So that's the kind of guy that you wanna learn from for sure.
Yeah, he's been on quite the grind and everything, and you can tell that he dedicates a ton to it, talking to other players, knowing what's going on, staying on top of the metagame, and that's really what you have to do in order to be a strong player in any singular format, but being able to do it across multiple formats.
Yep, and he really seems to have a good head on his shoulders, really humble guy, very, very pleasant. I hadn't really talked to him in person ever until really like a month or 2 ago when I did the team event with Connor Mullally and Ali Warfield. And, we just randomly were talking to him a little bit about playing like Civ and stuff. Just a really, really nice dude. It was cool having him on for sure.
One thing that stood out to me at the last event was because, we were talking to him a little bit. It was like after, I think it was at the team tournament. It was after like the 6th round. So he's going into the 7th one. And so Magic is inherently a very mentally draining game, right? You are tuned in so much, and when you're doing a team tournament, you're tuned into not only your match, but you're tuned into your partner's matches as well.
Yep.
And so someone was talking to him, and they obviously were a fan, which was really cool. But I appreciated that Will was like, "It's not nothing against you, man. I'm just really mentally drained right now, and I'm not like ignoring you, but I'm just not all here, and just going." And it was like nice because like I've seen a lot of players that are in that state but aren't able to just like vocalize it that hey, I'm just not all here right now. I'm just I had a really intense last match. I'm really focusing. I'm just trying to like recuperate before the next round kind of thing.
Sure.
And it's just like I don't know. It was kind of cool to see that and hear it. So
that does sound very, very self-aware. A lot of self-awareness and understanding that the way you interact with other people definitely matters and will leave an impression. So that's good. That's really cool to hear for sure. So sorry, dude.
You about what you're doing for the tournament coming up.
Yeah, so really, it's very simple. Just like Will was saying, Delver is clearly the best deck. I said this last week on the podcast. There's a reason 25% of the format is Delver. It is the best deck. It's broken. It's a very broken deck. And even though I haven't played a huge amount of Legacy, and there are tons of decision points in Delver, there really are. There are many, many decision points. We've been playing some leagues. In our first couple leagues, we've gone 3-2. And even though we haven't played perfectly in all the spots, I've typically been able to recognize where we made mistakes or errors. And that's a big thing, is just being able to learn from every game and know where you're pondering incorrectly or where you're brainstorming incorrectly. And we definitely made some of those mistakes. And that's the really key thing with Delver, is being able to ponder and brainstorm properly. And also some of our sideboarding decisions, we kind of figured out we were making mistakes as well. And mostly in regards to how many blue cards we left in our deck against What was the guy's name? The really popular combo player.
Oh, was it Bryant Cook?
Bryant Cook was
Yeah,
playing
he was
the
playing Spell, right?
yeah, oops all spells, and we boarded down to like 21 or 20 blue cards, which was
I think it was
definitely
20.
too low when our whole game plan revolved around forcing. And we lost a game because we had a force in hand but didn't have a blue card. And after the match, we kind of determined that, well, even though Murktide is a pretty awkward threat in the matchup, it
Mhm.
probably just needs to stay in the deck because it's blue, and we probably actually should have just cut Darcy, I think was
Yeah,
our
and
conclusion.
that's
Ragavan
totally
giving
wrong.
us the
Like
Lotus
you up.
Petals we thought was really good, and Darcy's just like slow and what like siphoning into or filtering into new cards isn't nearly as important as just having a good opening hand in that matchup. You don't have time to
No.
use the Darcy's triggers. You really don't, because the game is typically going to be decided in the first 2 or 3 turns. Usually the first 2 turns, maybe even the first turn, but
Yeah.
certainly by turn 2 or 3. And Darcy's just not usually going to have the time to set you up. So I feel like the Darcys should have been cut. We should have left in the Murktides because they will be a very good threat if they need to be, but they're also just a blue card to pitch, and that was like one of the findings that we had from our leagues. But my big noticings with Delver so far are knowing when to force of will and not to force of will is massive. Knowing what card to
Even
pitch.
like the legacy too. I mean, you see a lot of players doing improper
Yep.
forces early on,
Yep.
and that's easy to start recognizing what cards actually matter. But later on, as we're dealing with now, as you're playing more and more matches, it's not just what card to hit, but it's like the circumstances around these cards.
Right.
Sometimes it's okay to let the card you want to hit all the time pass.
For
Because
example, the game we played against the mono red prison deck, we let a chalice resolve in game one and held the force because the force at the time would have been really, really bad. And I thought we could beat the chalice, and we ended up beating the chalice. We had a threat in play. It was a 3/3 Darcy, and then I think we ended up resolving a Murktide later too, and then we just also had this force of will to beat Karn, which is what was really potentially going to beat us, was Karn into bridge. So we just let the chalice resolve, which I think even a lot of experienced Delver players may have fallen for the trap of countering chalice there, just because typically chalice is like unbeatable. But if you have a threat, it's not unbeatable. You just need to attack them with your threat and just pitch your 1-drops to the force of will type of deal. That kind of thing. So that was really interesting. We had, like I said, we had a few games where I noticed that we made mistakes on ponders or brainstorms or what have you. It's very important to know what you're looking for at what moment, and then obviously knowing what your opponents can do later is important too. But typically with ponders and brainstorms, you need to just know what you need to find right there, then and there, and find those cards. And it's really, again, it's not really that complicated. You just need to know what you're looking for at given times. Um, but
it's like I always laugh because it's like, yes, that's a very simple concept. You just need to know what you're looking for, but
yeah, the
it's
classic
like
Matt Ayers.
you just have to know what you're looking for. But do you know what you're looking for
Right.
in this matchup with what they played, with the potentials, with what you have in your deck?
Right. The funny thing about this is Matt Ayers called me out in the Discord call the other day about how sometimes when we're playing games, I didn't even notice I did this, but I do this on stream too. Is I'll go, oh yeah, we're doing this for sure. I think we're doing this for sure. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure.
I recognize that you do. I've never
Yeah.
called you out on it, but I recognize you do it. So sometimes now you'll see me pause when we're like going through things and
Yep.
playing things together. You'll see me go, I'll let you say it. I'm about to play it, and then I'll go, just to double check. We're playing this, right? And you're like,
Yeah.
because you're a thinker.
Yep.
You always think about the lines, the potential, what they have, what you have, how you can lose, how they could win.
Right.
Which I mean, everybody's always thinking about it, but you add a lot of layers to it. I will always give you a lot of credit on that. It's why you use your clock. You always effectively use your clock, and
Yep.
so always give you the extra like 5 seconds to double check because you go, you'll just like do a quick double check of every line you just thought of and go, yep, nope, we're good.
That's the hard. I mean, that is the one of the really big things that separates successful Magic players, I think, and then more like middle of the road Magic players is you have to. It's super critical to recognize at all times how things can go wrong in a game, because you never want to lose the games where you're ahead and should win, right? Those are the really crucial ones. Like, there are games where you're going to fall behind and you're just going to lose. Like, whatever. There's nothing you can do in a fair amount of your games. Like, you are going to lose in this game. But the really critical thing when you're playing Magic is to always be thinking, okay, how can I lose from this position? What is going to beat me? What can beat me? If my opponent top decks card X and then card Y, how can I play around these things? And yeah, I think I'm not trying to toot my own horn or whatever, but I am typically pretty good at playing around really, really bad situations for myself.
Yeah.
And that's, I also think, and you've probably noticed this in a lot of calls, I'm typically very good at reading what opponents have given situations in a lot of spots too, which is nice.
Yeah, and it's you reading it based off the lands they played, what mana they had open on what turns. Like, I've seen you even go, no, if they had it 2 turns ago, they would have played this, not played that, and even if they had it the following turn, they probably would have played this. And so as a result, if they have it this turn, they would have just run it. We don't care anymore, so just run this out.
The really fun ones are calling the sweepers in limited. I love reading sweepers in limited, man. Which this weekend when Matt was playing one of the games on Discord, and I was just like, oh god, our opponent has a buy invitation only, and then sure enough, 2 turns later, we just get completely blown out by the buy invitation only. Just destroyed. Our opponent had like a laid to rest in hand too, so they're like drawing cards off the creatures they kill, and oh my god. But just the way the game played out, I don't know, it just felt like it was there. And even though it's a rare, what'd say, Dewey?
It was the block. If I remember correctly, there was an attack.
There was a really weird, there was a block that just seemed really bad, and our opponent was like playing a Naya deck, and we really hadn't seen that many good white cards, and it was just like, it feels like this guy has a buy invitation. We forgot our invitation to the wedding. We're in trouble here. And sure enough, we got blown away, and it was certainly a really rough loss to watch Matt have. But man, oh man. But anyway, to kind of bring all this full circle, I will be playing Delver this weekend in Legacy because it is the best deck. And even though I'm certainly not gonna play it perfectly. I'll probably be playing it at like 75-80% proficiency. But I'm confident enough in myself as a player to believe that I can still have pretty good results even with that much experience.
Yeah.
And again, sometimes like even when you're not playing the best deck perfectly or even like super well, it's still just the best deck. And it will still just carry you to a good amount of success anyway, which is kind of what we saw when I played the Urza Oko pile at the Invitational last year and went 8-0 in Modern. I hadn't played that deck one time, not a single rep. And I did make a couple mistakes. I made a couple mistakes on camera. I forgot to plus an Oko one turn. Like, I was missing some obvious stuff. Forgot to plus an Oko one turn. I missed a Bauble trigger. I didn't plus a Karn one turn. But some of that was because there were a lot of moving pieces to that deck, and I was really thinking about a lot of things and how to sequence everything. And you have a million permanents in play because you have 5 food or whatever from gooses, and things just get pretty wild and out of control. But the deck was just so good that I could make those little silly stupid mistakes. They were very dumb mistakes. I'm upset I made them, don't get me wrong.
But it doesn't matter because it's just how powerful.
Yeah, the deck was so broken and ridiculous that it was still able to carry me to the finish line. And obviously I still played. I think overall I played the deck pretty well, and obviously 8-0 would speak to that, but I still was making some really sloppy mistakes that, but fortunately the deck was able to kind of carry me over.
So that's what you're on for Legacy.
Yes.
Modern. I know you're a guy that doesn't really ever decide decks till
Nope.
till the day of. I feel like. So
Nope.
what are like the top 3 decks that you're considering?
Sure. I'm really interested in these 8-rack decks that we were playing today. I think I made a few mistakes, and I think tomorrow I'm gonna try like a Luris build of the mono black one, and see how that feels. The no Liliana Veils, see if that's reasonable. I also want to try the Kahira thing that people were talking about. Was kind of interesting. Just like have Kahira as a companion because you play no creatures, so it's just free, and we were already playing a white splash anyway. I definitely want to change the build a little bit. So I think those decks are still on the table. It's unlikely I'll play them, but if I like 5-0 a couple leagues or whatever, or I'm very confident in my matchup, specifically with Shadow, then I might play it. My other option is Shadow. Shadow's just a really, really good deck, and it's having really good success right now. And then my third option would be Elementals, and I really do like Elementals. I think it's a very good deck. I'm just very concerned that I'm going to run into Shadow a few times, and my weekend's just going to be over because that matchup is really, really tough. You can win it, but it's very difficult. I still have not ever beaten that deck. So from my results, you would think you can't beat it. You can, but it's tough, man. Like I was telling Will, Dress Down just kind of invalidates the whole Risen Reef plan, which is really, really bad. It's kind of the whole point of the deck is to get Risen Reefs into play and then just spew an absurd amount of value all over the table and just ride a wave of value to victory. But that's not gonna cut it against Dress Down. And so when you run into Shadow, it's a really rough time. So I'm very concerned about the Shadow matchup. Even though Robert Hayes has taken down 2 NRGs in a row, I feel like he's either dodging Shadow or he knows something I don't know, or he's just drawing significantly better than me in that matchup, or his opponents aren't as good. I don't know. My guess is he's not running into the deck because the matchup is really, really tough.
It's not like Modern where it's 25%. I mean, not like Legacy where like is it Delver's 25% of the meta.
Yeah.
In Modern, it's pretty like
it's like 5, 9, 8, 5. There are a lot of decks. There are a lot of good decks. There is absolutely not a clear best deck at all. Hammer's great, Shadow's great, Blue-Red's great. These like Yorion mono white Taxes decks are pretty good. I wouldn't say great, but they're quite good. You've got the Urza blue white pile that's like pretty good. You've got Elementals. You've got 4-color Soup. You've got combo decks. You've got Belcher. You've got Ad Nauseam still there and still putting up results occasionally. You've got Tron. You've got Amulet. I've already named I think 11 decks, and we haven't even covered half of the decks that are like reasonably good. I haven't even mentioned Rhinos. That deck's still there. It still does its thing. It's fine. I don't think it's like super good, but it's still a good deck. It just does its thing and it does it well. It's just
all the variants of these decks too, where they're doing like a single color splash,
yep.
And it's not even a problem. So it's a great spot, and I totally can understand why those are your top 3 decks right now.
Yep.
What about this last weekend? You played quite a bit of Magic, right?
Oh yeah, we haven't even really this is so we haven't even really talked about the Arena Open. I've kind of erased it from my memory because I was a little pissed off about how the day 2 went in some regards. I mean, it still went fairly well for me, but I would have liked more. Obviously, natural response to not going all the way, but. So yeah, we'll kind of talk about that a little bit. So I streamed day 1 and kind of day 2 of the Arena Open. Day 1 and some of day 2 you can check out on either our Twitch or YouTube channel if you're interested. But basically, day 1, it was draft. For those that didn't know, the Arena Open was draft, and I typically never do more than 1 entry. So I was only going to do 1 entry. I'm not the kind of guy who's going to sit there and throw a bunch of money at an event. I think that is not lucrative, and I would also just get tilted and ticked off if I continue to throw money at it, and then I'm going to play worse. And I don't think it's a great strat. So I just go for one entry typically. If I have a bunch of gems, then maybe I'll do a couple entries. I did that in one of the historic ones with auras. But typically, I'm only going to enter one time.
You did 3, and that was like the highest I've seen you do an entry.
Yeah, I think I did 3, and after the third, I was like, okay, I'm done. And the only reason I did the third one is I broke even on value in the second one. So I was like, well, this is kind of a free roll. Let's do it again and see what happens. But yeah, anyway, I did one entry, and my deck ended up being really, really nuts. I got a Cemetery Desecrator in Pack 2, which is one of the best rares in the set. It is the best rare in the set in sealed, and is like second or third by the numbers best rare in the set in draft. And I got that, and I also had like an unsummon. I was just a very good blue-black exploit deck. I had Headless Rider, 3 Rot-Tide Gargantuas, the Cemetery Desecrator, like I said, the unsummon to recur the Desecrator, which happened in one of my games. I think it was like round 4 or 5. Again, if you want to watch all this, you can check it out. It's all on video. So I'm not going to go into huge detail. But the deck was really good. Spoiler, I went 7-1. I go 7-1 in day 1, and I think I might have even put that on the title of the video, so I don't know how much of a spoiler that even is. But day 1, crushed it. Was really, really happy. Day 2, I stayed up way too late with you and Matt, just watching you guys try and queue as well for day 2. So I stayed up until about 3 a.m. with you guys. Yep. I think 3 a.m. is where I cut it off, and you guys still played.
Yeah, I think I went to bed at like 4.
Yeah, you guys kept grinding. I said, okay, man, I got to go to bed because I had to wake up early. I had to just enter the event immediately because we were going to do the stream at Galactic Toys and Games for the 1K. Yeah. The store champs at Galactic Toys and Games in Kentwood, Michigan. We were going to stream that. I told Larry that I was going to be a commentator. He was really bummed out because one of our other teammates said they couldn't do it and was worried we weren't going to be able to stream it at all. And I said, no, I won't do the store champs, and I will do commentary. And I told him that early in the week, so I was going to stick to that. No matter what. And so doing the Arena Open, I was kind of just doing day 1 just to see how it went. I wasn't necessarily expecting to day 2, obviously. Had I been expecting to day 2, maybe I wouldn't have done the whole commentary agreement. But it is what it is. Was really happy with the queue for day 2 and all that. But anyway, had to wake up early, 9 a.m., and had to just hop right into it. So yeah. I was drafting on pretty little sleep, and I've gone back and rewatched the draft because Matt was kind of telling me he disagreed. He certainly disagreed with passing the Avidbook Caretaker in Pack 3, which was a wild pass. That's one of the best rares in the entire set. But at the time, I was not in green at all. And I had some very solid white cards, and I wanted to stick to my guns. Sigarda's Imprisonment is a very, very good removal spell in this format. I think it's very underrated. If you're not playing against specifically blue or black exploit cards, it's one of the best removal spells in the entire set because Exile is really, really relevant, and it's also super busted against some of the rares in the format. For example, it's incredible against Bloodhall Purveyor, I believe is the name of the card. The vampire that's a 5/6 for 4, yeah, that whenever you... Yeah. It's literally broken when you put it on that card because then for the rest of the game, every time you play a spell, you get a blood, and that guy just sitting in play is just straight value for you. It's just complete advantage. So I value Imprisonment really high. I think LSV certainly underrated it in his assessment of the card. And to be fair, he even said in his assessment, if you have what's the name of the app that shows those ratings? You have it on yours too. The thing that shows the deck on Arena. Untapped. Yeah, so if you have Untapped, you'll see the ratings like a 1.5 or something. But to be fair, he even said in the rating, he's like, this is probably low. I'm willing to go up on this. And then kind of explained why he thought it was bad. But I think the card's very good. I would give it at least like a 2.5 or a 3 rating. I think it's very, very strong. I'd probably give it at least a 3. But anyway, I had one of those, and then I already had, I think at the time, I had the Bride's Gown and the Groom's Finery combo. And so I was pretty happy with my white and didn't want to abandon for green. I don't hate that pick. That pick isn't the one that's pretty awkward, but I think there were certainly some spots in the mid to early portion of the draft where green was kind of open, And I'm very curious to see, and I'll probably go back at some point and do that, like redraft it as if I had drafted green. And obviously, your opponent's picks, the other drafters, might change based on what you take. So it's like kind of awkward to do it that way. But I'm still going to go back and just kind of see if I would have changed all my picks, what my deck may have looked like. But anyway, I passed Rook Caretaker and pass 3, but then I was pretty rewarded because I got a buy invitation only, I think at pick 3 in pack 3, which took my deck from being okay to being really, really good because I pack 1, pick 1 Olivia's Attendance, which is also an obscenely powerful rare, which won me most of my games that I did win. But anyway, I play the first 2 rounds before going to Galactic, and I win them both. So I start 2-0, and I stream both of those. Again, if you want to go back and watch that, you can. Then, my third win, I ended up getting while at Galactic right before like round 2 had started. So then I'm 3-0, and then disaster strikes. I play round 4 again between one of the rounds. And game 2, I'm in like pretty good position, but my opponent is able to claw back and win a game where it looked like they were behind for a portion of it. But they crawl back and win the game, and it was a frustrating loss. And I'm boarding for game 3, and all of a sudden the internet just completely cuts out at Galactic Toys and Games. So in the middle of my boarding process for game 3, I try to run and grab Larry and say, hey, please set up a hotspot. He sets up a hotspot. We can't even find it in the networks. So I run out of time, and I just lose to a DC. I didn't even get beat by my opponent, just straight up lose to a DC, which was just sickening. Yeah, just really, really sickening. A very strong deck. So that was my first loss. You get 2 losses. Basically, the next 2 rounds, a lot of mulliganing happens, and it ends up being a 4-2 deck, which 4 wins is still good for 10,000 gems, which is really helpful when I've been streaming a lot on Arena and need to use gems to buy packs to get cards that I'm missing. A lot of them, like random anthology nonsense or the random jumpstart decks. I'm missing a lot of those cards because getting those cards is nearly impossible because you just have to play a bunch of Jumpstart, which is terrible value and like it gets very boring very fast. It's not the most exciting format in the world. So anyway, end up going 4-2, which I'm happy with that. If you would have told me at the beginning of the weekend, I would have. I ended up spending some money to enter this event, which is very, very rare. I haven't until like last week. I hadn't spent money on Arena in like 5 years. But it just so happens that when you're streaming and building decks all the time, you kind of have to throw a little bit at it to keep building decks and to keep up with the tournaments and stuff. But if you would have told me that I would have gone 4-2 and gotten good value on the weekend, I would have been happy with it. So that was cool. We had I can't remember how many Swish guys we had top 8 the Saturday event, the Saturday store champs. It was like 5 or 6. So as a team, we had a really great weekend too. And Andrew Wolfice got like 10th and 11th at both store champs, so he was right on the outside both times.
The other one got 9th too, right?
Yeah, he may have got. I think he got 10th, and maybe it was 10th twice. I don't know. Maybe it was 9th, 10th. Yeah, there were 6 of us on Saturday, and then I think Jeremy Pinter top 8'd the one Sunday, and if Nate Cainstay wasn't the biggest greed lord in the world, he also would have top 8'd. He started 4-0 in a 6-round event and forced his opponent to play in round 5 because his opponent was on Hammer and he was on Shadow, and he thought it was a good matchup. The matchup's really close. It is favorable for Shadow, but it's not a slam dunk by any means. No matchup's ever a slam dunk. I'm never forcing my opponent to play when I have the option to double draw. If anything, and then in round 6, he forces his opponent to play again, loses again. His opponent was on Hammer again, I think. I can't remember 100% if they were on Hammer, but I'm pretty sure they were. And he ends up getting 9th on Breakers. And yeah, so Nate should have top 8'd. I was getting at him a little bit after the event. I was like, "What in the heck were you doing, man? That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard." If anything, you draw in round 5 because your breakers are going to be insane, and then you force the play in round 6 if you care about seeding that much. I have done that before, and that's fine. That's a reasonable thing to do. It actually makes sense. You're not just risking your top 8 for no reason. And
I always take guaranteed top 8, no matter what.
yeah, man. Anyway. So yeah, Nate should have top 8'd on Sunday. He gave it away. He literally said, "No, I'm gonna try and get." And the funny thing is, like, I don't even think he would have played. They would have played it out. So it was just throwing it away. Like, just anyway. Yeah, and then obviously we've got Zyphens in here telling us about Alex Zummer. Did really well, and he's a Galactic guy, not a Swish Gaming team member, but a really cool local guy. Follows the stream in chat occasionally. Really nice dude. Former Galactic employee, so he's a great guy. And then yeah, Daniel Wharton took the top so they didn't actually play out top 8 on Saturday. So but he had a very good weekend again. But yeah, so in a nutshell, my weekend was day 2 of the Arena Open and get a 4-2 for 10,000 gems, which is twice as many as I put into it. So, and now we've spent those 5,000 gems this week on crafting some Oswald Fiddlebenders and a 1 Thought Monitor so far. I'm sure I'll be crafting more in the future because Andrew Wolfice. And honestly, I want to see how good Thought Monitor Blood Fountain can be in Historic too. So we're going to do that at some point. What'd say, Dewey?
I think it has a lot of potential.
Oh, it does.
And I've been playing a lot of Modern these last 2 days. Not Modern, Historic these last 2 days. And I'm not going against the meta decks on ladder. It's kind of weird. Like,
yeah.
I'm playing against some outlandish stuff, and I'm just like, this is great.
Yep. Must be nice. I've typically been playing against the meta stuff, which is, I guess, is good. That's how you can tell if your decks are actually reasonable. I've been really impressed with my mono white monument Yorion build. Actually, it's pretty sweet. I also have a non-monument build, but the monument's been pretty impressive actually. And Welcoming Vampire was a massive add to the Yorion decks because now you just have a absolutely crazy value train. If you can set up the loop, the Yorion loop, the game is like over. You're drawing like 4 cards a turn. You're gaining like 5 life a turn if you have a veteran. Like I was telling you about, Dewey, I'm playing Irrigated Farmhand now, or I think that's his name, Irrigated Farmhand. Ambitious Farmhand, maybe. The 2 mana. Is it Ambitious? Yeah, that makes sense. Irrigated doesn't make wouldn't. Yeah, okay. Ambitious Farmhand, though, really good 2-drop in that deck. And that card's even seeing Modern play, so it makes sense that it's good in Historic, too. A lot of the white Yorion piles play the Farmhand. But I've been really liking the deck so far. Portable Hole is broken in this format too. I really like having access to that card because Cat Oven, all these like Luris, the green-black Luris deck is like super good, but it's actually kind of weak to Portable Hole, especially 4 copies of those plus 4 copies of Apparition plus ways to blink your Apparition. Yeah, and Ephemerate's also a very broken card. And so I've really liked that in these mono white piles as well. I'll probably stream that again in the near future. It's one of my favorite decks for sure. But yeah, that's what I've been up to in Historic.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I played the Red Bull tournament on Friday, and unfortunately, one of my last rounds, I had a similar problem where I just DC'd. My dog was very interested in Ethernet cables on Friday.
Sounds like our cat.
Yeah.
Sounds like our cat.
I was down 2 Ethernet cables, and he was working on the 3rd. I pulled him away, disconnected, lost the match as a result of the DC. And I gotta say, one of the things that annoys me the most about Arena when it comes to DC is the time frame that they give you to reconnect is very limited compared to like MTGO. Like
they need to find a way to get rid of the rope in comp events if they're going to continue to use Arena for the competitive scene, which they're going to do. I mean,
I
that's
just don't want rope at all. Period.
yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, if you have a clock, you don't need the rope. The whole reason they had the rope at the beginning is they didn't have a clock, but now they've implemented a clock, so the rope is pretty much obsolete at this point. It really is. The only thing the rope does is it kind of acts like a judge would act in paper to force you to make a play in a timely manner, which, yeah,
But
I get it.
like if that was the only thing it did, I would agree with you. But it punishes you for making plays.
Yeah.
Like I've been on a huge Simic or Tamir paradox kick today,
Yeah.
and so I get punished for making plays. I make enough plays, I'm comboing off, and then I always have in the back of my mind, if I don't combo fast enough, it will just end my turn, stop the stack, discard, whatever the case would be.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just makes me lose the match as a result.
Which
so,
is really stupid.
yeah, it's not like I'm not going through the plays.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing that bothers me. But,
That's fair. I haven't had that problem yet, but that kind of issue is why I never played Reclamation on Arena, as I was worried that kind of stuff would happen to me. And so to just avoid it altogether, I just never played the best deck, which is definitely bad. I mean, that's a not good thing for sure. So, I agree. The rope at this point is pretty obsolete. It really is. Now that they have a clock, Arena has come a long way since it first came out. It's changed and adapted and it's gotten a lot better. I mean I know Larry gets on it pretty often, but I love Arena. I think Arena's a really really good client. I think Moto's also typically a good client. They're both very very good for what they're intended for. They could certainly be made better, but Arena's just awesome for just getting a very high amount of matches of Magic in at a very high velocity. Like you're just able to hop in and play over and over and over and over again, and just it's really nice for just playing Magic.
Yep, and I mean, I agree. They both have the pros and cons. I appreciate what Arena's doing for the game, 100%. It introduced a lot of players into the game.
Yep.
So I take that. I love that. I will always give Wizards a lot of crap on this. I think the direction they might be going, especially with this alchemy announcement, I'm really, really worried about them creating a large division between the online players and the paper players.
Sure.
And so much so that it might be detrimental to the paper players in the long run.
Sure.
If we're only going to have championships on Arena, people are going to say, well, what's the point of doing paper? What's the point on doing Moto? And we're seeing a huge effect of that right now with Moto, where new cards are super expensive because nobody's drafting it like they used to.
Sure.
So the supply is just not being introduced. So when you have to pick up a new deck, I mean, look at the Elementals deck right now in Modern. It's like $1,500. It's expensive. You want to playtest it too? Most rentables can't get. If you've been investing in it, that's great. But if you want to get a new set of some cards, sometimes you're dropping $400 for it. So.
Yep. Yeah, and Zyphon, you're right, man. I mean, yeah, drafts can take a long time to fire. A lot of events can take a long time to fire on Moto because, like we're talking about here, a lot of the player base is over on Arena. And to be fair, Arena conceptually is a lot better to look at. It's again a lot of newer players sometimes gravitate towards standard, or now maybe historic. Those Arena formats, they want to see those anyway. In Grand Rapids, everybody likes Modern, but I'm sure that's not the case everywhere. And so, I mean, it's one of those things where I agree, Dewey. It's definitely something to keep our eyes on and hope that Wizards does a proper job of managing it. Now, I will say, it's in Wizards' best interest financially, I'm sure, to keep both sides of the spectrum happy. So at the end of the day, because it will make them money to keep both sides happy, they will probably try and keep the game good for both sides because at the end of the day, they're a business and they want to make money. So they're going to do whatever they can to do that.
I agree with you from that financial business point. And like I'm talking about too right now, though, you're having, not only are they having trouble firing on Moto, they're having trouble firing in person. People don't want to show up because they can jam.
Yep.
They can just jump on Arena and league I mean, get a new tournament, and if it's bad, you can just go draft another deck. You don't really care. And a lot of times, if you've been playing a lot, it's free because you have the gem stockpiled or you have the gold stockpiled. If you're a good
Yep.
player, you pretty much can just free roll it, as our friend Matt has shown. He doesn't put a dime in it; he just plays it very, very well,
Yep.
and he just free rolls it. So
Yep. Yeah, no, I'm guilty of that. I don't typically. I would almost always rather just stay at my home and play on my computer a draft than drive over like 10 minutes to Galactic. That's 20 minutes of my time. That's gas. That's like actual money I have to spend. That's time I'm not home to maybe spend with Julia or whatever too, because like sometimes when I'm playing, she just hangs out in the room with me as well. So it's like it's there are definitely a lot of cons to not playing on Arena.
yeah, I mean, I was guilty of this even before, Um, if we were playing, I mean, I always liked going to Friday Night Magic, Thursday Night Magic, Monday Night Magic, because I like that camaraderie. I like going.
Yeah.
But if I went and I lost my round and I was like in an awkward spot where I might not top eight, I just dipped.
Yeah.
Like I saw everybody, I hung out a little bit. I said my things to everyone, got caught up. If I went home, I could jam a league or two, depending on the deck I was playing before the night was over. So, you know, I totally get it, but it does come with the costs, as we're getting deeper and deeper into it. Because at this point, we basically have to maintain three different um, sets of games. You have to keep your arena collection. You have to, either keep your Moto collection or pay for a rentable service, and you got to keep your paper collection. So.
Mhm. Yep. Yep. Very true. Very true. So hopefully Wizards will do a good job of figuring out how to fix that issue. But honestly, maybe that's something we'll just maybe the in paper drafts are gonna just continue to kind of dwindle. I don't know.
I will say that's also a fault of this set and the last set. They haven't been amazing, and there's not that many chase cards that people are after. If
Right.
you're not playing standard, in paper, you don't really have much of a reason to play it. Like I mean, I bought a bunch of standard cards, but that was only because we were going to the Invitational. If it wasn't for that, I guarantee you, I would not have bought a single card.
Mm-hmm.
Other than the cards that potentially were in Pioneer, in Legacy, or in Modern, because I don't generally like to keep standard decks because I hate spending $300-400 on a deck and then it rotates out.
Yep. Very true. Very true.
Yeah, Meat Hook Massacre is the only one that I picked up that I knew I didn't mind overpaying for, and even there, I got an insane deal from two of my friends, for it.
Man,
And
imagine how much money that card would be in paper if historic was actually a paper format, because that card is literally like why black green is so busted.
it's interesting because if Historic was a paper format, I would probably appreciate it more because they wouldn't be doing some of these online only cards and perpetual cards and alchemy stuff, and then it probably would have breathed new life into it. And I mean, in a sense, Historic is why we're probably never going to see Pioneer now because they put a pause on it. So
They put a pause on it.
yeah, I think they put a pause on it for Arena because it was supposed to release this year. Then they delayed it, I think, right?
Okay.
Until next year potentially.
Okay.
And we'll kind of see how that plays out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting for sure.
Yeah, because it was going to be Pioneer Masters, which was going to be Arena only. It was supposed to release in 2020. It got pushed back until July 2021. And then they stated that the schedule didn't have room to focus on growing a unique identity, so they were putting a pause on it. They're planning on doing it later, but as of right now, there's no real timeline.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say I do like. It's weird because I actually like a lot of the cards that they designed that are arena only. Like I think they're really cool. I think the design space was really neat, and I think they did a pretty good job on a lot of those cards. It's unfortunate you can't make cards like that in paper because a lot of them are actually like really cool cards.
So I was talking to someone else about this. I I get annoyed with it because it splits the player base. So that part of it, I get annoyed with, but I can accept it if it's an online only card.
Hmm.
I'm fine with it because if it's online only, it's for historic only. That's fine because we know that historic's an arena only format. Right now, with the alchemy announcement, it really bothers me because if you're doing these card corrections and rebalances, it's going to cause even more confusion for the player base. You
Yep.
have these people that have played arena only, and so they're going to like if we're getting a fixed Oko, we're getting a fixed, I don't know, whatever the case would be. It doesn't matter anymore. If you're getting a fixed version of it online and you go to play it in paper, like all of a sudden you're like, that's not what that card does.
Yeah.
This is, and what are you gonna do? Are you gonna print this at some point? Because that's the potential, right? Like if you go, because we errata cards, we just never saw, and then you saw the fixed versions of these as the cards got reprinted. If they fix Oko and it becomes acceptable for historic, will there be a time where they go, we're gonna reintroduce Oko? If you want to have the new version and you go buy it, it'll have the corrected text on it. If you have the old version, it's now errata to this. Is that something they're gonna think about doing? Because if they are, that's gonna cause a lot of headaches.
That's fair. Um, yeah, I don't know. I yeah, I really don't know. That's a very interesting thing to think about, and I guess if they did errata it, would there really be that more headaches anymore? Because then Oko just does what it does. It's just the new version. The old version doesn't even really exist anymore.
So the problem is then if I like I have a playset, right?
Sure.
And I just want to use my playset. I go to a tournament, the playset's now wrong pluses, wrong minuses, wrong effects. It causes confusion in the game.
Yeah, that
For
makes sense.
online, it's okay. So I'm hoping with Alchemy they focus on not rebalancing and they focus on more on just generating new cards.
Sure.
I mean, they can create effective new cards. If they want to create an Oko and call it something else, they can just call it Oko, give it a different title, and it's fine. That's an online only version at that point. It can be the fixed version, and it doesn't have to cross over into the paper version. That's my only thing. So anyhow,
That's fair. That is fair. Yeah, all that is a very good point for sure. Um, so I don't know a ton about alchemy. So they're gonna be fixing old cards is something they're gonna do in alchemy. What else are they doing? Are they
they're also
putting?
introducing new cards.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be like a new set with fixed old cards and then new cards. Are they doing like the arena only cards again that like do the weird effects and things?
Yep.
Like okay, they are
So
doing
you're
more of
gonna
those.
get an ever-evolving play mode. So build decks with standard cards. They're new to digital only. They're rebalanced cards on Arena. You're gonna get new to digital, so that's gonna be 63 new digital cards with mechanics designed just for that digital play. That's where you're getting that perpetual. That's where you're getting that what is it, conjure, all those effects, right? That are online only. You can't do it anywhere else. That's going to be the focus there, and then the rebalance it. They're letting people try it out. At first, I thought it was going to be historic only, which made sense to me because that's where they were kind of like introducing these like online only cards. But apparently, it's going to be a standard alchemy and a historic alchemy too.
Sure. The funny thing about some of these online only cards is they actually could do some of this stuff in paper. Conjure is a really interesting example with some of the way some of the Conjure cards work. For example, there's like the blue tome that adds a random card of like 9 to your hand. Well, technically, you could have that card exist in paper, but you would have to have like some sort of you'd have to like add a different like you wouldn't
So
play these cards in your sideboard. They'd be like in a different zone, which
yeah,
would
then you'd
like.
have to
But you could play that. You could have that card exist in paper. You would have to own all 9 of those cards and then just shuffle them randomly and put one of them into your hand. But then what becomes awkward is I think you can keep hitting the same cards. You'd have to like replace it. But it is possible. Like I know some people are like, oh, they could never do. Well, they could. They could. It would be very awkward and difficult, but they actually could with some of these cards.
with the conjure, I would agree with you. The one that's awkward that comes to my mind is the merfolk that conjures a tropical island for players. And the one that is not possible in my mind is anything that gives a perpetual.
Yeah.
Randomly, a card in your hand gets a plus or plus one. Randomly, a card in your hand gets a reduction in cost. The tracking on that would just be insane.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, it would be insane, but what you would probably have to do, what comes to my mind, is you would shuffle your cards randomly, whatever. Like, for example, if you had creatures or whatever, if it only had creatures, you would, I, I don't know, maybe you would have to make it where you have to reveal those cards to your opponent. You would have to add that to this effect because that's the only way you could like do it fairly, that you know you're doing it fairly. And then, so your opponent, you revealed that type or whatever, and then you shuffle them, and then you would have to take like a little piece, or honestly, you wouldn't even need a little piece of paper if you have to reveal it to your opponent, because you could just reveal the creature that perpetually gets it. But maybe to track it, you would still want to use a piece of paper or something and just put like +1/+1 in there or something. But a lot of this stuff would actually be possible to do in paper. It would just be very confusing, but it's possible. It really is.
I agree with you that it is possible, but it is also confusing.
Yeah.
It also, for me, leans on what was it? What were the lands that Vivid lands?
Yeah.
The ones that came in with the counters, and it was really, really annoying to track because every single land that you played required 2 dice on it.
Yep.
And became kind of like miserable board states. That's, I think, the same direction this would go, right? If I've got to have an extra little thing to represent plus counters, minus counters on these cards, cost reduction, other cost reduction. This one has 1 cost reduction. These 2 have 2 cost reduction. It just you're not wrong that it is possible.
Yep.
But it's super convoluted. And like Zach saying, the seek effect, where you're getting a random creature or spell within your deck, also kind of annoying, kind of.
Oh yeah, that one would be incredibly awkward because then you would have to like reveal every spell or every creature from your deck to your opponent, and then shuffle them up. And yeah, that one would be awkward. But again, it is possible to do. It would just be weird as heck.
Yep. So I get it. But
And it would be very time consuming as well. Can you imagine having to go through a deck, find every creature in it, reveal them all to your opponent? Then like that process would take like 3 to 4 minutes. It'd be a lot of game time we'd be losing to some nonsense like that. But Dewey, do you have any more topics you're trying to hit this evening specifically? Yeah.
That's it. I think NRG Milwaukee is your last big event for the year, right?
Yep, as far as I know. I might do something else if something pops up,
Online.
if someone mentions it to me or whatever. That's usually how my events go that aren't the big ones. Someone says, hey, there's an event this weekend, and I go, oh, sweet, I want to go play in that, and that's kind of how it goes. But, yeah, we're at an hour 40 minutes, so I think we're going to be good to, as Larry says, put a bow on this and close it up. Thank you so much.
I think the final statement would just be, if you are free this weekend and you do want to check out a great tournament series, great organizer, check out NRG. They've got the Milwaukee tournament. They've got Modern and Legacy. You can see the event details on MTG Melee and see what they have going on there, and see if you got a shot at potentially making it into their Players' Championship.
Yep, absolutely. I agree 100%. But yeah, we're going to put an end to this. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here and listening. Really appreciate you. And just real quick to kind of plug our channel. We also do streams. I do live streams every day from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the moment. Very, very soon in the near future, I'll be upping that time a little bit, I think. Going a little deeper into the afternoon/evening. But right now, that's the time. So if you're interested in checking out me messing around with historic, modern, or standard decks, come on down and check that out. But until, for some of you until tomorrow, for some of you until next podcast.